Hello, my name is Tatiana Benali. I am from the Navajo Nation, and here I'm together with you all to get this screening rolling and get some discussions happening. Um, if we could just go around and have everybody introduce themselves, and that would be good.
Tansi Nidrojek, Tanis Toronto, Nitigason, Naya Api Tawigosisan, Zagi Tawak Nitodin. Hi, everybody. My name is Tanis Toronto. I am Métis from Peace River, Alberta.
For those who don't know, I'm an enrolled member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. I live here in Connecticut. Love the community house. Love you all. And really just focusing the last few weeks, just so much of my energy has just really been focused to what's going on for everyone. It's heartbreaking. And, you know, the sun always shines, even when it's cloudy, the sun is always there. So I just am talking with people, checking in with people, and just really trying to send so much, I guess you could just say, love and light out into the atmosphere. I feel like we can't control much, but what we can control is what we project, and really just staying grounded.
Hi, I'm Marisol. I don't know Quechua, unfortunately, so I can't introduce myself in my native tongue. But my dad comes from the Quechua Nation in Peru, so I'm indigenous to South America. I'm a freshman in college, and I'm looking forward to being here and discussing multitude of topics and engaging in activism and advocacy for this community.
Hauka, Mamiyuta Minue, Richaboya, Kumeyaay from the San Pasqual Band, which if people are familiar, it's the other side of Turtle Island, just outside of San Diego, California, colonial California. But I've been in New York now. We've been here for 13 years. Wow. But on the East Coast for 23 years, which is when I first connected with the community house shortly after we got to Connecticut. So it was probably about 22 years ago. It was the first time I started to have my connection with the community house. And there's a lot of folks who I met then who I'm still close with, Fran and Lance and a bunch of other folks. So it's good to be here. And just as Monica said, you know, the biggest thing is just, you know, trying to stay connected with all our relations and, you know, spread all over the place and, you know, calling and Zooming and chatting and whatever other means people use to stay connected. And, you know, we're just trying to do that. And also, as people are thinking about all this, is I think we're all just trying to remember we'll find our way through this. And also we'll think about all the good things that, you know, we know are part of our lives, and you know, just try to keep that strength and that good spirit within us, and to spread it out and share it with everybody.
I'm Nathan. I've been in New York for a year and a half, I guess, and I've helped out in a few ways via Friends of H, and I'm just excited to. Previously I was in so-called Indiana and Kentucky, and I'm just happy to be here and learn and you know, support.
Hi, my name's Marley. I'm Navajo. I live in North Carolina, but my partner was in New York, and she invited me to this. And I haven't seen this documentary, so I was pretty interested. What are we supposed to say?
Just introducing yourself. Yeah, whatever you want to say.
My favorite color is blue, and yeah. I don't know what else to say, so I'll leave it at that.
That's great. You have a great background too. Love it.
Yeah.
Quingwalo, Nin Shinzi, Tecumseh, Nino, Giayi, Matinicok, Wak Wampanoag, Niwalotaman Windapuli. Hello, my name is Tecumseh. I come from the Matinicot tribe and the Wampanoag tribe, and I'm Turkey Clan from Long Island and Queens.
My name is Yolanda, or Melanie, depending on where you would have met me. I have attended an action for the Wet'suwet'en Solidarity in New York City, and so I really would have liked to keep abreast of the situation. I am Black Carib or Garifuna from Honduras, so that is Arawak and Carib and Afro-Indigenous descent.
Hey guys, Talon. I've been the IT specialist with AICH for, I would say, about 2 years. And a lot of you know me, a lot of you don't. But thanks for coming. And yeah, that's that.
So first order of business, I kind of wanted to, this is a zine that's on like the Unistoten like website. They have this wonderful website that is dedicated to resources and action items that anybody can use. It's open if you wanted to host your own screening for your own organization. If you're just curious on like updates, who to follow, who's on the ground, and all of that information is on the website. But one of the resources I found very helpful was this theme that was created, and yeah, I just wanted to go through like the first like 4 or 5 pages of the theme. I thought it did a really good job of outlining some context for people who are maybe new or need a refresher on Wet'suwet'en and what's happening there right now. So the zine is called Heal the People, Heal the Land. We'll just go in right here. So the Unistoten are the original Wet'suwet'en Yinka Wewat Zinli district to the lands of the Wet'suwet'en. Over time in Wet'suwet'en history, the other clans developed and were included throughout Wet'suwet'en territories. Unistoten territory is abundant and the terrain is very treacherous. The Unistoten took action to protect their land from Lionsgate metals at their Casetzolen in Yinka and built a cabin and resistance camp at the Talbotqua at Gosnell Creek and Wedson-Qua, which is Morris River, protecting from 7 proposed tar sands and LNG pipelines. So this is who we're talking about. This is some basic information. The camp is located on the shores of the Wedson-Qua and mouth of the Gosnell Creek. These are all tributary to the Skeena, Boki, Babine rivers. Energy companies propose pipelines crossing the river at the exact point of our home and structures on the Unistoten territory of Talbotqua. The Unistoten homestead is not a protest or demonstration. Our clan is occupying and using our traditional territory as it has for centuries. Our free, prior, and informed consent protocol is in place at the entrance of our territory, expressing our jurisdiction and our right to both give and refuse consent. Our homestead is a peaceful expression of our connection to our territory. It is also an example of the continuous use and occupation of our territory by our land. Our traditional structure of governance dictates the proper use and access to our lands and water. Today, all of our Wet'suwet'en territory, including Unistoten territory, is unceded Aboriginal territory. Our traditional legal systems remain intact to govern our people and our lands. We recognize the authority of these systems. And they've been like on the ground doing this for close to 10 years now, taking initiative for their own community and recognizing the land and how they can take action against the Canadian government. And if you don't know what free, prior, and informed consent is, the free, prior, and informed consent protocol used by the Unistoten is a request of permission to enter the lands of the traditional chiefs and matriarchs. Visitors are asked to identify themselves and their relationship to the host, as our ancestors did, like a border crossing. The protocol questions make Unistoten land a safe place. FPIC ensures peace and security on the territory. Unistoten territory remains relatively intact. The forces are still there, wildlife prospers, and the water is still pure. And that's thanks to the people on the ground continuously fighting for this. There's a lot of pipelines that are have been proposed to go through Wet'suwet'en lands. A constantly expanding number of companies have proposed tar sands and fracking gas pipelines through Unistoten territory. 3 particular companies, Chevron, TransCanada, and Enbridge, are still working without consent from Unistoten. And so this translates into TransCanada, Chevron, and Enbridge, which are also known as Coastal GasLink, Pacific Trans Pipeline, and Northern Gateway. So these are all connected, and it's important to know the proposed pipelines are a threat to the watershed, as well as the plants, animals, and communities that depend on them. The Unistoten are fighting for the future health of the land. They are protecting the traditional hunting, trapping, and fishing territories to ensure that the natural beauty, and bounty of the earth will be enjoyed for generations to come. And I think this whole zine is so beautiful and it's very informative. It goes into all of the different aspects of the history of resource extraction in Indigenous communities, how this is related to missing and murdered Indigenous women. There's so many different issues here that we'll be able to talk about in the open discussion later. But I just wanted to give you guys a preface of what's going down on the ground right now. Anyways, if you want to find this, it's on the Unistoten toolkit on their website.
I'm not hearing the video, Tatiana. Is there a setting that needs to be changed?
I'm not hearing it either.
We tested it earlier and it worked. Maybe on the YouTube. Make sure the sound's up on that. And when you try it again, can you turn on the captions? Oh, I didn't mute you though. Oh,
Okay, there we go.
that's weird.
Alright.
I did not mute you, I swear.
Alright,
Okay,
that
try.
was the problem. I was muted. Sorry, guys.
Okay,
One more time.
there we go.
Anybody go come and interrupt our prayers or eating?
Good morning.
What's up?
We have a complaint that there was a box on the bridge.
No box.
It's the box right there that was painted black. And the young girl at 8:30 came this morning and removed it.
She just said it had kindling in there. Maybe somebody forgot it when we were doing ceremony last night.
Okay. Because we got complaints that there was lots of activity on the bridge last night.
Ceremony. Look at the flags. We did a water ceremony because they're trying to destroy our water. I'm just getting annoyed of their bullshit tactics. They're trying to make us look bad and send you guys all the time. And every time they do stuff to us, it takes you guys 2 hours to get here.
So you're blessing the water last night on the bridge,
We're doing prayers for the water because it's in danger right now because of this BS that's happening right now. It's not just this. They destroyed our traps, destroyed our trap line. Conservation wouldn't come till they already cleared. All of this adds up. And you got to understand our frustration. We've been here since time immemorial before anybody came to these lands, and your law can bend the rules to let somebody come in and destroy our land. And you get you guys to help them. If it was your house, you'd feel the same if the same vandals keep coming and wrecking your shit and nobody's doing anything. I was here 10 years and it took a long time to put these stuff up. They're here 1 week and they want to destroy it all. Nowhere in the junction does it tell them they can frickin' ruin my stuff. I'm pissed. What's in what in police justice? Yes, police justice.
Tap one time in front of your face. Thinking of what are some of the challenges and also positive things that have come out of the last year?
Well, in the last year, it's been busy. Everybody needs to stand up, not just Indigenous people. Everybody needs to stand up to the political powers that be, that they need to change. And quit making legislation and policies to make us look like criminals when we're just trying to protect what is ours. It's not just this little courthouse. The whole world is watching what Canada is doing, what the province of BC is doing. They haven't done their job. They're skirting the responsibility over to industry. And I know I'm doing the right thing.
Good to see some more Wet'suwet'en.
No, we're talking about.
There you go.
And they were building.
Oh boy, that's sad. There and some fish heart and chili on the stove. Hey, there's plate if you like. Do Ashla.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Get him dead being cut.
My name is Vic, and I'm with the Coastal GasLink Project. And the reason for Mr. Couture to be here is to post the injunction that was granted by the BC Supreme Court to allow us access to do the work.
Canadian courts do not have any jurisdiction on Wet'suwet'en territory, so Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs have full jurisdiction. We have for thousands of years, since time immemorial. We have never ceded or surrendered any of that jurisdiction. So I am not here to argue that point with you.
So we're going to post the injunction. You're not going to allow us through to get to the bridge with what access we have or what...
I have nothing stopping you from accessing the bridge. On the other side of the bridge is a different territory. This is Gidimt'en territory. You're trespassing on Wet'suwet'en land! You continue to remove us forcibly from our lands with your rifles, with your semi-automatic weapons. Nothing has changed in 150 years.
We're also keeping our eyes on land demonstrations across the country, all in support of anti-pipeline protesters in British Columbia. 14 people were arrested at the protest site late yesterday.
That sparked a stand of solidarity across the country. Rallies were staged in dozens of cities, even some in the U.S., in support of the anti-pipeline protesters. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau could face heat over the issue tonight. He's in Kamloops, BC, hosting a town hall.
Trudeau has made improved relations with Indigenous people a core priority of his government.
You in the striped scarf. Yes.
Hello, my name is Tilly. I come from the St'át'imc Nation. I want to ask you, what are you going to do to stop oppressing and holding our people under your colonization? When are you going to give us our rights back? When are you going to start giving a shit about who we are as people and not seeing us just for our land?
I believe that the conflict that you're making it into out west with helicopters flying overhead and paramilitaries showing up with assault rifles is appalling. And so I'm more or less here to tell you that that's shameful.
What you did to the Unesco, that's a national disgrace. January 7th was a national disgrace of Canada.
It's inspiring to see the support worldwide that we have. It's not just our Indigenous people that are standing up, it's people all around the world are concerned about the environment and concerned because they know it impacts them no matter where they live. So yeah, with that injunction and such low numbers out here, all of the Wet'suwet'en chiefs, because of what happened at 44, were afraid for us that were still up here at the camp, and they didn't want any of us to get hurt. So out of fear, they made their decision to get us to stand back, and we made a decision that it was too demoralizing, that we weren't going to take down those gates. If they wanted them down, they had to do it. This is my people's land way before the settlers came here. And you think you have a right to come on our land and destroy it? It's not right. My people have history here. The partners that have signed, they have no history here. And I hope you can go home and sleep tonight. We started coming back here in 2009 when we wanted to put a cabin here and realized that we safely could drink this water. So this became our prime point on where we wanted to spend more of our time. This is the proposed corridor for multiple pipelines, and we decided to move out here because we realized we couldn't protect our territories from afar. We're 2 hours away, and because they kept on trying to come in. Who are you?
It's Rod.
Where are you from?
It's Chevron, representing the Pacific Trail Pipeline Project. We're here today because we'd like to do work on the territory. We're requesting access to the territory here today so that Wet'suwet'en people can work and see the benefits from our project.
We've already said no to these projects and that no pipelines will come on our territory. And we only have 2 territories left out of all our territories because of other people occupying our lands and agriculture, municipalities. All we have left is 2 areas, and this is one of them. We hunt, we fish, we trap. This is our critical infrastructure.
So what you're telling us is that you will not allow us access onto the territory. We understand that. We thank you for your time here today. We're here offering, we've left some water, some tobacco.
No, thanks. We've got clean water right there. That's what we drink, and that's pollution, the plastic that adds to the landfill.
The 5th meeting of the 18th session of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues is called to order.
I am Frida Hewson of the Unist'ot'en Wet'suwet'en people of Canada. I am here today to express concerns for human rights violations happening to my people. This year, a pipeline company forced a court injunction on us. If we stop them from entering our territory because they don't have consent, we face arrests. We have not been able to hunt or gather our traditional foods. The company has security and police force keeping us from exercising our Indigenous rights. Elders, women, and healing center clients have been threatened with arrest for accessing our own territory. The pipeline company is violating Wet'suwet'en law, trespassing on our territory and starting to destroy the land. They have already destroyed the heritage site. After bulldozing part of the forest, we searched through the piles of dirt for evidence of my people. We found artifacts. The archaeology branch of the government and police assistants came in and took the artifacts and then released news bulletins claiming the artifacts were not from their original place. They are trying to erase us from our own land. All these acts that continue are the acts of genocide. I am here today to make UN aware of our continuous genocide happening in Canada and to demand that our Indigenous rights and laws are respected. We're wondering why our own people weren't standing up beside us, and the more and more we realize that a lot of my family, the ones that are standing up, all the females in my family, we've done a lot of healings in our lives. We've gone through the same trauma as everybody else on our reservations. So that's the reason why we're able to stand up against what we know is wrong. So that's why we identified that other people aren't able to stand up because they're still stuck in their trauma and oppression and everything that comes with being oppressed and living in a system that discriminates against you. So when my niece started going to school for clinical psychology, her long-term vision was to see a healing center on the land so that we could start healing our people. It took us 4 years to build the 3 phases of our healing center, which has a commercial kitchen, dining hall was built in the first phase, and then a rec room upstairs and food storage. And then the second phase included a boardroom, laundry room, an office, and 2 counseling spaces. And the 3rd floor was a art room / workshop room. So that was the 2nd phase that was put in, and then the 3rd phase was sleeping quarters. So this is the 4th year of work camp, and it's pretty much done with just small minor things. And then now the long-term goal is to add more cabins, because for the healing center, we require a whole territory, all of Kalbitsqua, to make this program successful. This is a new cabin being constructed by one of another significant site for our people. And this is the 2nd one we're building to reoccupy another part of the territory. Beautiful scenery, tons and tons of medicine in this area. My dad always told me that the only way we're not going to lose all our traditional territories, we have to reoccupy them. It's pretty much what settler people have done. They occupied our territories, and now they call those municipalities and act like they own it, even though it's still Wet'suwet'en lands. But he said we needed to reoccupy and behave like we own it, because we do own it. We're behaving like we own these lands, and we don't need nobody's permission to put up our cabins, and we don't need nobody's permission to be here. We only go by our own Wet'suwet'en laws.
What do you think is going to happen in the future in this land?
The future I see is more and more of our people living in cabins all over this territory, more of our people getting thoroughly immersed in their culture, becoming independent and harvesting their own food, their own medicine, so they can take care of themselves and their families. More and more other clans doing the same of what we're doing on their territories. The future I see is there will be no pipelines through here. The future I see, there will be no man camp here.
What are you afraid of?
That's a trick question, because I don't fear anything.
I believe they're going to be like releasing a longer documentary as the year goes on. So when that comes out, make sure you watch it. As far as keeping up to date on what is happening right now, if we could all post Instagrams, I feel like Instagram is like a very good way to keep up to date. There are a lot of like land defenders that have taken to social media to amplify what's happening on the ground. One of those is Hidden Gem Checkpoint. But I'll try to list more once we open the floor to discussion. Until then, I'd like everybody to think of something that they noticed or wanted to know more about or appreciated about the film. And I will be reading a timeline of what has happened on Wet'suwet'en territory. So 1997 is when they had the Supreme Court case that they mentioned. And basically, this was like a landmark decision recognizing that Aboriginal title is not extinguished in the areas claimed by Wet'suwet'en and Tucson. So they have right to their land. There's no treaty that exists where they gave their rights away. This land is governed by the Unistoten people and has been, like she said, since time immemorial. 2008, they opted out of the BC treaty process. So that's, yeah, an important date to remember. 2009, they established the checkpoint, which we saw in the film. Whenever somebody comes, if it's Chevron or whatever, they ask them a series of questions that is what I also wrote about the protocol that they established. Who are you? Where do you come from? Who do you know from this territory? And what are you doing that will benefit the Unistoten people? So that was established in 2009. 2010, they started cabin construction. So they started occupying their lands in a more overt way, like building and constructing the health center that they mentioned, the log cabin. So they're doing all of these like more than 10 years ago. And I'm not mentioning every single date. There's a lot more things that they have done throughout the past 10 years that was very meaningful. From 2009 to 2016, they're building bunkers, the healing center, and then in 2016, the hereditary chiefs of Unistoten said no to all pipelines. That decision was established unanimously by the 5 tribes that live in Wet'suwet'en territory. They all voted and said no to pipelines. And yeah, they've done like speaking tours, camps that would teach the youth how to occupy and teaching them the different protocols, the geography of the area, the water, the trees, the medicines that are there. And then in 2019, which is what the film that we just saw, so all of the people there, I believe, were arrested by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP. So 2019 RCMP Tactical Unit assault on Gidimt'en checkpoint. And also in 2019, they put out an international solidarity with Wet'suwet'en campaign, which is where they gathered all of these different resources, compiled them together, and yeah, they're available for everybody. So as of now, with the coronavirus, it's beginning to be kind of a tricky situation there because you want to protect your health. So you can't be out there the way you were. It really sucks for them because in the time that the coronavirus has been spreading, the pipeline is being built without their consent. So you can follow that on Gittinjen checkpoint. And yeah, so now I would like to open the floor to all of you guys.
I think when I first watched it, I found out that I thought it was super funny about that little comment about water and tobacco. That will always make me giggle. And next time I go to someone's house, I'm going to offer that before I go in. But I think there's a lot to say because the history that I know of between Canada and First Nation people is that unlike the US, it's a little bit different. You know, we have treaties, and in some cases, treaties act as an instrument of dispossessing land, while at the same time giving some form of political power, quote unquote. And I think there's a lot to be said about the arguments that are being made from the people who are against these pipelines, that it's very like this particular nation has existed long before Canada was in existence. And yet Canada expects to have this this characterization of itself and as a form of like a very liberal state, that it respects these treaties, or not even treaties, but these relationships. And this is one clear example of that being a lie. Now, I don't know exactly what is particularly the history, and what I thought was really interesting was when, I forgot her name, but when she said that Canada is breaking its own laws to do this, and I'm not necessarily sure what that means. And if someone knows what that means, I'd be open to hearing what that means. But I think for the most part, a lot of these laws are geared to like undermining, you know, Indigenous sovereignty and Indigenous jurisdiction. And they use that term a lot, jurisdiction. And my understanding is that Canada wants to put this pipeline through their territory. And the argument is that it's critical infrastructure. And if you remember that one point where they were at the, when they were facing the cops, one of the Indigenous women said, this is our critical infrastructure, referring to the land. And I think that's a really good argument, not only in terms of like understanding how infrastructure, natural resources, when it comes to like settler states, always outweigh Indigenous concerns, values, and lifeways, and in this case also political authority. And I expect probably that to be the case in future. And I think also what's going on right now in the territory. But you know, that's something I thought was pretty interesting to point to, is just the role of infrastructure, in this case defined by natural resources, the language of like jurisdiction, and how those play into undermining, or how those are played, how they're utilized in this documentary to make a point that's saying that like this is an injustice that is bound to happen again. But that's all I wanted to say.
Exactly. I feel like it doesn't matter if there are, you know, treaties or not. Like the Canadian government, the U.S., is going to violate whatever community is in its way for natural resources, for resource extraction in general. Yeah, but I think it's like really, I think if I had watched this like when I was a lot younger, I would have been a lot more angry just because like, you know, you grew up thinking like, oh, like if I, you know, check all of these boxes, I'll be more like respected, or I'll be able to survive better. But it really doesn't matter regardless. Which, yeah, I feel like is upsetting. But yeah, I agree with what you mentioned.
I feel like it's like when sorry, Marley, right? You were mentioning about like, you know, need for infrastructure. It's like building an air factory and like cutting down trees to build an air factory. You know what I mean? Like it's like this like big hypocrisy that I kind of realized. And as for like Canada breaking its own laws, I'm not familiar with laws in Canada, but from what I know, in the US breaking, you know, hundreds of treaties, you know, doing things that would be considered unconstitutional, that only is considered unconstitutional when it's, you know, when it comes to, you know, the people who have privilege in the US. But when it comes to Indigenous rights and the people who have been here for thousands of years, you know, and before, you know, colonization took place, it just makes me like wonder, like that's the only place that they're going to care about, you know, reprimanding their rules and their laws. But when it comes to the Indigenous community, they just kind of turn a blind eye. And that's kind of what I gathered from this documentary, is that, you know, that was the case, is that they just don't care. And they don't care if it's Indigenous land. And I liked what she said when she was talking about, like, if this was you and if this was your people, this would be a very different story. But that's just not the case. And it's just an injustice that has been going on forever. And it, yes, it makes people angry, but I think the point is that we need to make people more aware and advocate, because to be honest, I maybe like came across one post of it on social media. So seeing this documentary and like you like showing the slides was relatively new to me to get like more background information. So I think that what we can do during this, you know, pandemic and during this time where we can't really step outside and advocate in person, we can at least use the platforms that, you know, we have created to have a voice and kind of outreach to communities who might not be aware so much of what is going on, because there are some communities who are very, you know, influenced by this and very impacted. But maybe there's some places where people live, or where people have like, maybe like on Instagram, their following doesn't really have any knowledge of what's going on. So I think that like using platforms like posting videos, like maybe like a clip of that documentary, or just like posts that are like are informative, and like maybe like what you can do, like calling an elected official there. Like I'm not sure what the steps would be to that, but that could be a good start. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Monica?
Oh, thank you, Tatiana, for going over the dates and for everyone making comments. I'm really enjoying this. Tatiana, I wanted to ask you, do you know if they have the pipeline companies involved, if they have a projected time frame for the completion of the pipeline through the territory?
I am not sure. I believe like the construction through the territory just recently started. But before COVID-19, the people on the territory were doing a very good job of keeping them out of their territory and like holding everything down. So I'm not sure about the prospective finish date of the pipeline, or I mean, even like today, like we could be doing stuff right now that are actively like are protesting the pipeline. But But if anybody has information about that, please feel free to share.
I mean, like maybe like how would that information be? Like, can we just look that up, the time frame?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if you just look up the website that Tanis put into the chat, it has a lot of like, it has an updated toolkit. So they had an on-the-ground toolkit for 2019. So for that, it would have like all of the information up until 2019. But they have revised the toolkit and added information that is for now. And within that toolkit, there are a lot of resources for social media, like you said, call to actions about calling different people. I know there are several places here in New York City that you can call, and there are scripts in place that you can follow. So just like scroll on the website. And everything has like a step-by-step, like everything that you need to just kind of, all you have to do is just look on there, pick something and do it.
Yeah, maybe like we could, by using like the Instagram, because I know that the Instagram account is pretty active, like maybe we could like write like a script and like post like kind of like a directory like flyer or Instagram of like who to call and what to say, and kind of like compose our own script. You know what I mean? We could do that. Like small steps.
I think it was interesting. Someone mentioned the comment, like, governments here and also in Canada don't really care for or respect Indigenous territories, boundaries, treaties, agreements, and so forth. But I think that even holds true for non-native land. And the thing is that, of course, you don't hear that in the news or anything because they don't want it in the news. And there are countless people where they're non-native, they're private property owners, and their 5-acre parcels become eminent domain, or they have front yards, but guess what? We need to extend the sidewalk, so we're easing part of your property. And the thing is just the legal costs that ensue with all of this is just astronomical. So of course the governments get away with this. And I think that it's sort of like in Canada, perhaps the non-native community, it's easy for them to turn a blind eye because they're like, well, it's not my property, not my concern, but it is your concern, because the more this happens to our native communities, Indigenous communities, it's easier for the government to do this to non-native. So everyone should be on the same page with this. I think that's the crucial thing, is that our issues are no different in a sense. Okay, we have more of a contested history with land and settlers and so forth, but at the end of the day, this is happening across the board. And it's a huge, huge, massive violation of just ownership. And for example, with the coronavirus going on, you're seeing this on a mass scale here in the States. I mean, I can't even access any of the parks here. It's park closed. There's police who guard the parks, and I'm in Connecticut. So it's sort of like, well, who has ownership of free space? Who has ownership of fresh air and ownership of water? So it's sort of like everyone really has to wake up to understand we're all connected. These issues in Wet'suwet'en is non-natives issues in Canada, because their drinking supply is going to be contaminated. Their wildlife is going to be, non-existent in 15 years. So I think that's a huge thing for me, is like, we also have to connect with non-Indigenous advocacy groups, because unfortunately, they have more people in press or journalism, and it's just easier to get, access and camera time or what have you. And so I think, you know, just the more people who are involved where they understand, you know, this can be your property any day of the week.
Right. Yeah, I think like the people on Wet'suwet'en territory, I feel like they definitely have the knowledge with the land that is making it a lot more intuitive to protect like their land. They have this history with the land that, you know, spans back to time immemorial. Like, but I think what we're seeing here and what we're looking to when we see Indigenous communities protecting their land and continuing to advocate for themselves, Indigenous sovereignty. I think that it comes a lot more naturally to Indigenous people to take initiative to that, and I think it's beautiful that we're seeing this happen, you know, and it's, you know, a call to action for us, like on our own homeland, because there's always stuff happening. On the Navajo Nation, there's coal mining, uranium mining, fracking as well. And a lot of these have like a lot of long-term effects. And yeah, I guess like I just wanted to point out that like the history with the land is super important, I think.
No, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I think the problem with this is that this is just history repeating itself. And with the US and Canada, I know for the US specifically, they often forget that it was the natives who gave them the ability to make treaties with foreign nations from their own countries, which allowed them to be able to come over here and say that they were starting their own country. So this issue of occupying land and broken treaties and broken agreements is just something you see over and over, and it's an unfortunate commonality that will go across many nations. I know the idea of public domain is something that my tribe has dealt with, and we're only a historical recognized tribe, where our cemetery was taken as public domain when they wanted to widen Northern Boulevard. And this happened in the 30s, that they decided to start doing this. So I think it's something that just keeps on going and going. And I think really just thinking about what actions that we can take that are very strategic is like the most important thing. Because I think that protesting is a strong tool, but we have to make sure that we're getting on people's radars who aren't also already allies, you know? And that's the big issue, is like how we need to start figuring out whether it's, you know, calling or writing letters to Congress people or whatever Canada's equivalent is. We have to make sure that these are the people that we're contacting, and these are the people that we're talking to, and making them see and humanize natives. Because that's the thing, is that as Indigenous people, we never really became totally human to non-natives. To a lot, not all non-natives, but to a lot of non-natives, especially ones that think very colonial. They think of us as something below them.
Yeah, I feel like with that, I think the theme that I saw is just like education, and I feel like that's a lot more important, and it's going to be a part of our you know, I mean, it's already a part of our daily lives as, you know, as Indigenous people, as Black and Brown people, minorities. We're always explaining our backgrounds, and we're always doing, you know, that extra work to, we're already doing that extra work already to educate all of these different people. So I think one of the things that we can try to be more mindful of is learning how to educate more people within our community, and also being mindful of like what boundaries to set with, you know, with your own self, because, you know, you can't teach somebody that doesn't want to learn, but that, you know, that shouldn't deter you from continuing to educate like the rest of the members that are in your community that are willing to learn. And I think for me, that is something that I'm trying to be more mindful of and practice more, is being able to talk about like these like tough subjects in a way that is accessible to everybody, and that gives them, you know, a motivation or an action to, you know, support Indigenous people, support Black people, support, you know, all of our relatives that are, you know, under oppression, because I feel like resource extraction, just to kind of relate it back to what we're talking about right now, is common within all of our communities. Yeah, like, I mean, right now they are building a pipeline through Brooklyn, and obviously historically that is a borough that is filled with brown people. So this is definitely happening to all of our communities. Yeah, education, that's my main point there.
Absolutely, and I think also people have already mentioned about, if you will, ally building and coalition building. And I think along with that, as Indigenous people, we do actually need to step up and assert ourselves as leadership of that. Because as people know, there's such a growing awareness and consciousness around the need to protect our land. You know, our land, our water, all of our relations. And it's across diverse groups. And I think we can bring ourselves in to that as leaders. I think we're legitimately leaders because we've been doing this work forever. You know, that's part of our fundamental values, is to protect land and water, and to have that as a fundamental relationship, you know, building part of our life. And I've started to really find that diverse populations are in fact more receptive to that. There is becoming a greater understanding that Indigenous people should be at the forefront. But sometimes we still need to remind people of that. We need to articulate why we should be in that leadership. It doesn't mean solely, doesn't mean that we should, hey, everybody follow us, but we should still be in leadership collectively. And I don't think people are adverse to that. I think we just need to, as I say, we need to articulate that. We need to talk to people about how we do it, and how our leadership is going to benefit everybody, and that our knowledge is going to be something that's going to be incredibly valuable as we move forward in trying to change, you know, what's happening now, this climate crisis and this environmental crisis that we're facing. And I'm finding more and more people, they understand that. And so you're right, the combination of bringing more and more educational awareness, us working more and more around building and reaching out to allies and being, very active in coalitions is really important right now.
That's awesome, Rick. Really awesome. And that's cool because it goes kind of back to what, forgive me, I forget her name, the woman in the documentary, the main speaker.
There's something.
Okay.
Rita.
So she was saying that it's really like the women who've been at the forefront of, standing up, protecting the land. And it comes down to healing. And I found that really interesting that they touched upon the healing aspect. And then that goes to what you just said, Rick, about, we need our own leadership and we need people to believe in themselves and know that they have this inner strength and live without fear and live without the consequences. So I thought that was cool how you touched on that and then the whole healing aspect.
And sometimes it comes in very, very, sort of, if you will, they're not simple, they're complex, but very things that we can point to quite easily. Like, here's one example. This just happens to be one of my own, I don't know, touch points that, with this environmental movement, Greta became the face of the environmental movement, even in the US. And I'm thinking, all of the incredible indigenous women who've been doing this work forever, and Greta becomes the face of the environmental movement even in the US. And you have to remind people, like, how did that happen? How did that, it's still a bias. It's still a sense of superiority among Europe, sort of the European knowledge, European people. And when you mention that to people, and I'm talking about everybody, they almost all like, you're right. How did that happen? So there's a recognition that shit, we bought into this too. Even though it's not something, if we had given it more thought, that we would have necessarily gone to Greta as this heroic figure alone.
Right.
We would have understood it. Yeah, she's doing great work, but there's many, many indigenous women who've been doing that work forever, and it's intergenerational. So the narratives changes as well. It's not about the quote unquote youth movement. It's about an intergenerational movement. Because when you talk to any of our people about the work they're doing to protect land and water, they always point to their elders, they always point to their ancestors as being their inspiration, as being their educators. So even every aspect of the narrative changes when you make sure that we are the ones that are part of that, part of that story and part of the leadership.
Yeah, you're right, because this is our land. We came from the soil. We're connected. This is our existence.
Yeah. So kind of wrapping it up, we still have 8 more minutes to discuss. And I like that we shifted into like how we as, members in this chat can kind of think about and be like aware of your own capabilities and you're doing your part to be an ally to the Wet'suwet'en people right now. And I think that's great. I hope that we can all, take this moment, some action like within like the next week or the month in solidarity with Wet'suwet'en. You can also donate money to the various organizations and collectives that are on the ground. And those are pretty easy to follow if you just like look at Instagram. So some of the people that I've been following, I will list those in the chat, and you can keep up to date on those individuals that are on the front lines that have firsthand information on what's going on right now and what supplies are needed, what support our communities can do from afar to be supportive of what they're doing for their land. Yeah. One thing I was going to mention too. I forgot, but we still have 6 more minutes to that. If anybody else has anything else to add or things that they thought were interesting in the film that they needed to get out, that they wanted to discuss, feel free to take this moment to say that, say whatever you want to say.
Hi. Okay. So I forget who mentioned it, but someone mentioned writing a letter to an elected official. And it was really funny because I was on a Zoom class with my poli-sci professor, and he was talking about like how to like, you know, make speeches on like house floors and like write letters to editors and, you know, kind of script phone calls. So maybe like just putting it out there, like if anyone's interested, like I could create like a Google Doc and kind of start like drafting a letter that we could write to an elected official, just something that we could do like while we're in our homes, and I could share that.
That would be awesome. And I think
if anyone wants to put their like email in the comment section too, because yeah, I could start that.
That would be great. And with that, I also just wanted to mention that this series will be happening weekly. We'll be covering different Indigenous-led movements, and we'll be like discussing them afterwards collectively. And I think it would be awesome if we together kind of took actions on all of these like different things that are happening. I mean, it's one thing to have a discussion, but it's another thing to like, you know, to contribute to the work that they're doing in support. And I think that's a great idea. And with that being said, I also wanted to ask everybody if you had any suggestions or possible documentaries or Indigenous-led movements that you would be interested in having a group discussion about next week. If you guys have any suggestions.
I wanted to say something a little earlier, but everything was muted and I didn't want to interrupt. Right now is such an interesting time, especially here in New York City. Everyone is sitting at home. Nobody's doing anything, nobody's commercing, no one's in business for the most part. And as a result, no one's using a lot of oil. That's a great bit for right now. With oil prices mostly crashing right now, it does give us a little bit of a reprieve. You know, I think it is a kind of moment where we could reach people who wouldn't normally be able to reach with these sorts of message. Everyone is sitting at home. They have nothing better to do to listen, and I think they will listen. And what's more important, I think, is that after this crisis passes, and it will pass, things will have to change. They'll have to be kind of different, and it'll be a moment where Native people and Black and Brown people can all put forward a new way of existing in the world that doesn't need to be constantly fed all of our natural resources and constantly fed all the water and the land and the air. Yeah, and I think it's just such an interesting moment that we're all living in right now, and such an interesting opportunity, which we can't let go to waste. And that was my comment.
Yeah, I think I saw like a meme that was like, this is kind of like an unofficial like boycott of like everything, and like, you know, the colonial economy like seeing the power that we have by not, you know, supporting capitalism right now. So yeah, I love that, and I am interested also to see how things will be after, you know, after this goes over. Monica, would you like to go?
Sure. You asked if we have any suggestions. I don't know if in like the coming weeks you would want to address the Mashpee Wampanoag and what's going on. Because with everything, you know, I've been so kind of nuclear in my world and concerned about people like in my immediate circle. And so now that, okay, things are kind of like that survival mode of, you know, like soldiering on and getting everything in preparation is kind of coming down. And like Yolanda was saying, okay, we're all kind of at home now, safely at home. So now I'm like, oh my gosh, the Wampanoags, my gosh, they're right here, our neighbors in, you know, in Massachusetts. So I don't know if you would want to possibly bring that, what's going on in the case that ensues there.
Sweet. Yeah, that would be perfect. Maybe we can, if people are interested in returning, maybe we can all bring something to share too.
Okay.
Last thing I wanted to kind of address is the American Indian Community House is a part of the New York Complete Count Fund at the moment. And we're trying to get as many Indigenous people counted as we can. So if you can help aid in, you know, in our quest to find Indigenous people in a time of social distancing, that would be wonderful. And you can send me an email to get started on that. We will be having a texting party on Sunday from 4 to 7, 4 p.m. for volunteers that are new, and then 5 p.m. for returning volunteers. And basically what the community house will be doing is giving a history of the census and how the census has been received on the end of Indigenous communities, both on and off of the reservation. So we'll be talking about that and also giving you an orientation of this like software called Hustle, which is like a peer-to-peer teaching platform. And it's just a good organization tool. So if you're into organizing, it's just a good tool to like learn, and we'll teach you how to use it. So yeah, so if you're interested in that, I will put my email in the chat room.
Tatiana, real quick, there's going to be a training for newcomers for the texting party. That's 4 to 5 p.m. and it's a Q&A as well. Tatiana leads that, and then the actual texting party is 5 to 7 p.m. And Melissa just texted me. If you all get a chance, look in the chat box here. We've all been sharing messages throughout this whole time. But next week we're doing Shinnecock, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just that. That's all. I'm muting myself again.
Hello, Sheldon.
I feel like I've talked enough, but yeah, so we'll be doing Shinnecock next week. Does anybody want to take this time to give an update on what's happening there for those who don't know?
Tatiana, are you gonna show the documentary in Shinnecock? It's a really good one.
Yeah, we could do that.
I don't know what access there is to it. I know it's been on PBS a couple of times already. we have a TiVo, but I'm not sure. I don't think it's on YouTube. I don't know exactly how to access it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's public. I think we can get a hold of it.
Sweet. All right, yeah. So next week will be a group discussion on the Shinnecock. But yeah, anyways, with all of that said, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We hope that you continue to do the good work and show up for the Wet'suwet'en people. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys.
Ijan.
Nice seeing everyone.
Good seeing everybody. Ijan, Tatiana, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Care.
Thank you.